This is the new story about this skinny boy who fought with a zombie apocalypse after he got his newfound power. The story starts in the busy city of Seoul. People rush through cars and trains to reach their work. The trains are filled to brim with the people. Among the crowd, our main character, Sungwoo Sunbae, manages to reach his school. The daily commute to this school is hell, and he wonders if he should move out or quit school. Just then, a voice comes from behind him, telling Sungwoo that he should be so quick to quit something when he has been a part of formal special forces and is a discharged sergeant. The voice came from Sungwoo's friend Hanho, who asked Sungwoo if the special force part was a lie. Sungwoo tells Hanho that he can't say stuff like this until he joins the military and asks him till when he is going to postpone it. Hanho tells Sungwoo that once he joins the military, he will unite Korea. Sungwoo tells him to stop talking nonsense for someone who didn't even go to the military and makes fun of him. They are going ahead and Hanho immediately stops. Sungwoo thinks he went too far by making fun of him and asks Hanho if he is crying. But Hanho tells him to look at the sky. Hanho sees a text written on the sky saying 99%. He asks Sungwoo if he saw too, but Sungwoo denies it, saying he didn't. Hanho tells him that it was real and he is not faking it, but Sungwoo doesn't believe him, telling Hanho that he plays too many video games before bed and he is unable to distinguish between reality and game. He tells Hanho that he must be hallucinating because he drinks too much and walks off. Hanho believes Sungwoo and tells him that they need to grab a coffee. Sungwoo disagrees, saying he has a class to catch. Hanho tells Sungwoo that his class will end early today and tells Sungwoo to meet at lunch. He still tries to convince Sungwoo that he really did saw something in the sky, but Sungwoo doesn't believe him and goes towards his class. Sungwoo reaches his class and the professor is teaching. The lecture is boring and Sungwoo starts feeling sleepy. He thinks that he should have gone with Hanho to get the coffee. He has trouble staying awake and falls asleep. Just then, a screen appears in front of him that asks him what is the best job to survive in the world that has fallen. It tells him to choose right now. Sungwoo is unable to believe what is happening in front of him. Sungwoo rubs his eyes, thinking he is asleep. Just then, a short circuit happens and the school has a blackout. The students inside the class panic as they can't see anything. Sungwoo notices that the class has complete darkness during the day and knows that this is not a normal blackout. The students aren't able to use their phones too, and they wonder what is happening. Just then, everyone sees a screen in front of them asking the same question. Sungwoo realizes that it was not a hallucination and sees that it was a hologram. The screen says that only 15 seconds remain to answer. A giant flash occurs and from the screen, cards come out. One student tells others to not touch the card as it can be dangerous. Most students comply, but Sungwoo wonders if the opposite is more dangerous. They don't know what will happen if they do nothing and the 15 seconds pass. Now only 10 seconds remain and Sungwoo wonders if the screen is telling him to choose a card. He thinks it is similar to poker and wonders what card he should choose. Only 7 seconds remain and another student chooses a card and receives a sword for it. Seeing this, Sungwoo also chooses the card and the screen tells him he chooses a necromancer. The time is up and the screen says that the first job selection is over and if anyone failed to make a choice, there would be another opportunity. After this, the blackout is cleared and everyone can see again. The guy who got the sword holds it and others ask him what happened and what is that sword. He tells them that he chose a warrior card and got the sword. Sungwoo hears this and wonders where his weapon is. Just then, someone bursts through the window and comes. It is a teacher who is getting stabbed by a monster on his back. He screams for someone to help him. The monster hurts the teacher and stands up, going after the students. Everyone panics and runs away, leaving Sungwoo and the guy with the sword, Minsu, alone. Sungwoo calls Minsu and asks him to help, but Minsu asks what he can do. Sungwoo thinks he is done for. The monster goes to attack him. Sungwoo tries to turn back and run away, but knows if he shows his back to the monster, it will be the end of him. Sungwoo grabs the chair behind him and hits the monster with it, managing to hurt it. The screen then appears, telling Sungwoo that he has received 10 gold coins for hurting the goblin. Sungwoo is shocked by the message and wonders what it means. He wonders if the world is running like a game. The screen then informs Sungwoo that under his authority, the dead will become his followers. The screen shows him his follower list, which only has the goblin. Just then, the students start to panic, telling Sungwoo to look behind him. Energy starts to come out of the goblin's corpse, and Sungwoo sees that the goblin is just a skeleton, moving on its own. Sungwoo remembers that his job can call the undead as he is a necromancer. Just then, 2 more goblins burst through the door. The students start to panic. The screen informs Sungwoo that the undead await his order. Sungwoo tells his undead goblin to fight and get rid of those goblins for him. The undead goblin starts to attack the goblins. The normal goblins start to overwhelm the undead goblin and manage to cut his arm off. Sungwoo sees this and knows he can't just watch them fight and has to fight them himself. He knows that the goblins are tough opponents and tells Minsu to hand him his sword. Minsu asks why and Sungwoo says he will hurt them. Minsu tells Sungwoo that the sword is his and Sungwoo tells Minsu to then fight the goblins himself. Minsu is too scared to fight and Sungwoo tells him to just cut potatoes with that sword and picks up a chair to fight the goblins. He throws the chair at the goblins, knocking them, and the undead goblin finishes them off. Sungwoo receives 20 gold for hunting the goblins and the undead goblin approaches Sungwoo. He tells the undead to look the other way as he is feeling uncomfortable. Undead goblin is sad to hear this. Just then, the screen informs Sungwoo that under the influence of his power, the undead are in his authority. The two goblins he herded rise from the dead and become his soldiers. The system tells Sungwoo that the maximum number of undead is reached. The student and professor wonder what's going on. Just then, they hear multiple screams from people in the building calling for help. The student says that she is unable to reach the police. Sungwoo thinks that this might be happening to the whole school. Just then, he sees a bright light from the window. When he goes to see, he sees the entire city burning and wonders if this is happening to the entire country or maybe even the entire world. A professor comes through the door, telling students that they should leave the building. When they enter the hallway, they see two goblins again. They go to attack the students and students run in panic. Before the goblins can attack the students, the undead comes to rescue them. Sungwoo tells other students to run and he will take care of the goblins. Everyone spits off and runs in a different direction. Sungwoo tries to tell them to not split up, but it is too late and everyone has left. Sungwoo leaves them up to their own choices. Sungwoo knows that there are rules to this game and he has to follow them. Sungwoo thinks that his survival rate might increase if he faces the fights head-on. The normal goblins manage to overwhelm the undead goblins and also manage to destroy the skull of an undead goblin. The screen tells Sungwoo that one of his undead returned to eternal death. Sungwoo pleads with his undead to beat the goblins. They both fight and the undead manages to defeat the goblins. Sungwoo gets the gold for defeating them and he tells the undead well done. The screen informs Sungwoo that he has leveled up to level 2. Sungwoo opens up his character screen to see his stats. He sees that he doesn't have any abilities and wonders when he will get those. Just then, the screen tells Sungwoo to select a level-up card. Many of the cards provide random abilities, to which Sungwoo is disappointed. Sungwoo knows this is the most important aspect of most games and picks a card. The card says that his maximum number of undead is increased by 1. Just then, the goblins Sungwoo just herded rise up to join his undead army. He now has 4 undead goblins and the system tells Sungwoo that his mana is extremely low. Sungwoo is shocked that his mana is only 30, but is grateful that the undead doesn't consume a lot of mana. The undead stare at him and Sungwoo again tells them to look the other way as he is feeling uncomfortable. Sungwoo walks down the stairs. He knows he has to pull himself together because he would make more mistakes if he doesn't. He has no idea about what is happening, but he wants to figure it out. But his first priority is to survive. He wants to escape from this building first. Just then, he sees outside the window that multiple goblins are attacking the students and citizens. He sees this and realizes that the situation is somewhat better in the building and he doesn't want to rush down there. But he can't stay here forever. He lets his undead take the lead and he heads down. Sungwoo and the undead head down the stairs and meet Hanho, who gets scared and tries to attack the undead. He calms down a bit when he sees Sungwoo and asks him what these creatures are. Sungwoo says that these are his bodyguards. Sungwoo asks Hanho if he also chose an occupation card. Hanho says he did, and Sungwoo asks how many stars were there on his card. Hanho says it had 1 star and asks Sungwoo if it is good or not. Sungwoo tells him that it is not, and they both move on. Sungwoo says that they need to get to a safe place first. Just then, the screen appears in front of Sungwoo, telling him about the synergy of his team. Since they have the same weapon, a dagger, they have high synergy and will receive a buff. The synergy team doesn't just include his undead team, but also them. Sungwoo understands that even if he moves alone, he will get the same buff as the skeleton. Just then, while walking down the stairs, they see a bunch of goblins with their giant chief in the middle. Just then, the buff of the undead takes place. It is called the Smell of Death, and it reduces the opponent goblin's skills by 30%. The goblins are scared of the undead. The undead attack the goblins and overwhelm them. Just then, their chief raises his hand in the air and activates his skill, Madness of the Wild. It strengthens the goblins, and they turn the tide and overwhelm the undead. Hanho asks Sungwoo if they should escape. Sungwoo tells him to wait as he watches the fight closely. He realizes that the undead skeletons will move by following his command and realizes that what he needs to do is to attack the chief. One undead skeleton gets up and attacks the chief while it is distracted and manages to cut his arm off. The chief goblins kick the undead skeleton away, but the skill Madness of the Wild wears off and the undead manages to hurt the goblins and Sungwoo gets gold as a reward. but the chief still remains and attacks the undead skeletons. But the undead skeleton manages to overwhelm the chief goblin and defeat him, for which Sunwoo gets 50 gold as a reward. Hanho is surprised and they both see the items that were dropped by the chief goblin. The items are a crude spear and bracelet called Spirit of the Wild. The bracelet is rare and its effect is that it increases the user's minion's attack by 20% against the goblins. The effect is applied to Sunwoo's undead skeletons and increases their attack by 20%. The screen also tells Sunwoo that the buff skill will be activated after the conditions are fulfilled, and the condition is to get goblins as minions, which Sunwoo already has. The buff skill Madness of the Wild, and it increases the goblin's attack by 10% and attack speed by 20% for 10 minutes, and its cooldown is 1 hour. Sunwoo knows that he has gotten a lot of items and tells his undead soldiers good job. They scream in excitement, and Sunwoo gets uncomfortable by this and tells them to not do that again. Hanho asks Sunwoo where they should go, and Sunwoo says they need to get out of there first. Sunwoo and Hanho arrive at the entrance hallway and see a lot of people gathered there. He tells his undead skeletons to hide in another room as the people might get scared and attack them. Hanho agrees. They see someone telling the crowd to calm down and telling them that they are unable to contact the police and that the student council is checking what is happening. Someone says that the police can't do much in this situation and says that they need to just break open the door. The person says that he has tried and no matter what, it doesn't work. He tells the crowd to calm down and follow his instructions. Sunwoo recognizes the person as Lee Jinsuk Unbae. He knows that Lee cares very much about the hierarchy and authority. He is also infamous for pestering girls. Sunwoo goes to the door to check it and Lee screams at him to stay away from the door. Sunwoo is shocked to see Lee react in this way. Lee calms down and apologizes, saying that there is a lot happening and he is getting very sensitive. He says that he is trying to keep the students safe. Sunwoo wonders if Lee is doing this to feel superior. Lee asks Sunwoo if he chose a car, and Sunwoo says he and Hanho both did. He tells Sunwoo and Hanho that since both of them have weapons, they should help him to protect the students. Sunwoo agrees, and Lee asks him about his occupation. Lee sees a spear and asks if Sunwoo is a spear and says if he can really help him. He tries to downplay Sunwoo, saying that he fought with a goblin, and says that it isn't easy to take one down. He tells them that he picked a 2-star card called Warrior Shield, and says to them that they can just hide behind his back. Just then, Minso comes and tells Lee that he heard some faint noises of a goblin upstairs. Lee tells everyone to keep quiet and move and hide in the cafe. He says he will be guarding the entrance. Sunwoo calls Hanho and tells him to see the gate. At the gate, there is a screen which says that the door is sealed with magic, and to open it, they have to defeat the boss monster. They have been given the time of 2 hours to defeat the monsters, and if they are unable to do so, the monsters inside the building will become much stronger. Sunwoo tells Hanho that if they want to get out, they need to hurt the boss monster, so they can't expect someone to come to their rescue. Lee asks Sunwoo if he and Minsu know each other. Minsu makes a face as he doesn't like Sunwoo after their last interaction. Lee tells them that they both are under his authority and tells them to stick with one another. Sunwoo asks Lee if he is serious, and Lee asks Sunwoo if he has a problem with that. Sunwoo asks Lee if he can see the message on the door, and Lee says he can and says that they need to wait for the rescue team. Sunwoo tells him that the same thing is happening throughout the country and they will not pay attention to them. Lee asks Sunwoo if he served in the military before, and Sunwoo says yes. Lee says that the military will make a move and after that, everything will be fine. Sunwoo knows that Lee has a native belief and knows that it is impossible for the army to save everyone in this country. He calms down because if he doesn't, then everyone will be in danger. He sighs and leaves with Hanho. Lee tells Sunwoo that if he wants to survive, then sit inside the cafe and stay seated there. Just then, Minsu sees a goblin coming from upstairs. It's not one goblin, but a group of them. The students panic and Lee tells people with weapons to stop the goblins from entering the cafe. Just then, they see the undead coming from another room. Lee panics, but Sunwoo calms him down, telling him that they aren't goblins and they are with him. He tells Lee that he has to stay sane, as if the lunatic tries to act like a leader, then people are going to die. Lee asks Sunwoo what his occupation is, and Sunwoo says it is something amazing. The smell of death activates, weakening the other goblins as the undead skeleton attacks the goblins. Sunwoo says that the hunt begins. The students from the cafeteria are watching Sunwoo and Hanho fight the goblins. They all see Sunwoo's undead army and wonder what these are. Sunwoo also helps them hurt the goblins with his spear. Lee thinks to himself that he was going to watch the situation and then run away. He is shocked to see Sunwoo just slaughtered the goblins. The goblins try to run away, but Sunwoo orders his undead skeletons to block the stairs so they can't. The undead skeletons do as Sunwoo told, and Sunwoo thinks to himself that if the people see that the undead skeletons are under his control, it will see that he can control the situation and will trust him. Then together he plans to defeat the boss. The undead hurt the goblins, and Sungwoo applies the Spirit of the Wild buff skill. He knows that with all these, the goblins aren't much of a threat, but he knows that there aren't just goblins in this world, and there will be stronger monsters that will appear in the future. The people see that Sungwoo is controlling the skeletons and wonder who he is. The undead skeletons and Sungwoo manage to hurt all the goblins. The student praises Sungwoo and thanks God that he is here. Sungwoo sees that the goblins drop no item and understands that the normal monsters don't drop any items. The screen tells Sungwoo that he will receive a roulette ticket as a reward for hurting 20 monsters. Sungwoo knows he doesn't have an inventory yet and wonders where he should use it. He plans to use it later. He tells the undead skeleton great job, and they again scream in excitement. Sungwoo again tells them to not do it again. They approach Lee, and Sungwoo mocks him, asking if he was of any help. Sungwoo asks the students if they have seen the message on the front door and tells them that the door will not be opened by any magic. The students ask if there is a way out, and Sungwoo explains that the way is written on the message on the front door. There is a boss monster somewhere in this building, and they have to defeat it. The student hesitates when they hear this. Sungwoo tells them that they only have 2 hours left. They have to defeat the boss monster that is hiding somewhere in that given time. If they don't defeat the monster in a given time, something terrible is likely to happen. One student tells Sungwoo that he saw the boss monster on the rooftop. Sungwoo sets the goal to the rooftop and asks the students if someone is going to join him. Nobody volunteered, and Sungwoo knew that. Even if he managed to give them hope, the opponent is the boss monster and it would be hard to fight it. Hano asks Sungwoo if he can also stay here, but Sungwoo tells him that he needs to be there to buff the skeleton. Just then, a girl volunteers, telling Sungwoo that even if they fight the monster, she doesn't expect any good results. But it would be annoying to be tangled up together in the hallway. The girl is named Yeonjisu, and her occupation is Tiger Hunter. She asks Sungwoo, what is the point of taking the students if his undead skeletons can do more than them? Sungwoo asks Lee if he will be coming. Lee covers up for his fear, saying that he will be staying here to protect the students. Sungwoo accepts, and he and Hanho and Yun start to climb up the stairs to reach the boss monster. Just then, a bunch of goblins come from the bottom floor and attack the group. They also come from the upper floor, cornering them. Sungwoo tells Yun and Hanho to cover the rear while he takes care of the above. Yun goes to attack the goblins and slashes them with her sword. She hurts all of them, and Hanho is shocked by her strength. He goes to tell Sungwoo that Yun is amazing, and then Hanho sees that Sungwoo also hurted the above goblins with ease. Sungwoo tells them to hurry and come up. As they climb the stairs, they see their Professor Huang on the ground injured. They approach him and ask him what happened. Professor Huang says that the students of his class were hurted because of him. Sungwoo tries to calm him and asks what happened to them. Professor explains that thanks to Sungwoo, they managed to escape and fled to the research room first, but they couldn't stay there longer and fled to the rooftop. He followed the contingency manual and insisted that they move to the rooftop. When he reached there, he saw a terrible monster there, and the student who followed him with total trust got hurted. The professor warns Sungwoo to not go to the rooftop. He tells him that he needs to stay alive, and then the professor drops dead. Just then, the screen informs Sungwoo of his exclusive quest called Professor's Revenge. If he hurts the boss monster, he will receive an exclusive skill. The screen tells Sungwoo that his choice here will affect his fate. Sungwoo reads this and wonders if this is like a decisive turning point or something. He asks himself, why do they have to go through this kind of thing? He goes towards the rooftop. Hanho asks him if it is really okay for them to go to the rooftop. Sungwoo doesn't reply, but Hanho understands. Their group has now entered the boss monster's room. When they open the rooftop door, they see the entire rooftop destroyed, with goblins wreaking havoc and the bodies of a student lying on the floor. Sungwoo and Hanho are shocked to see this sight. Sungwoo calms down and thinks this through. He tells his team to go and check around the area. When the goblins see them, they tell other goblins, and they all attack them. Hanho asks if they should just run away, but Sungwoo says no and says that they must endure this. He activates his buff skill, Spirit of the Wild, and buffs his undead skeletons. They attack the goblins and match them in the fight. Sungwoo tells his team to use the undead as a shield. They attack the goblins and hurt them. Hanho tries to attack them, but is unable to. He thinks his small dagger is useless. Just then, he throws his other dagger in fear, and it hits a goblin straight in the head, hurting him. Hanho sees this and realizes his speciality. He throws another dagger, which hits the goblin in the head and hurts it. Hanho is proud that he has finally found his skill. The other goblins are weakened because of the undead's Smell of Death skill, which reduces the stats by 30%. They all hunt goblins, and the rest of the goblins flee towards their boss. They bow down in front of him. Hanho and others see this and realize that this is the boss monster. The screen informs them that the boss monster, the Goblin Centurion, has appeared. He and the rest of the goblins attack together. Sunwoo clashes the goblins with his spear and tells his team to get rid of the goblins first. They all fight and hurt most of the goblins, but the goblin centurion comes and goes to attack them. He tells his undead to move, but it is too late, and the goblin centurion destroys 2 of his undead skeletons. 2 new undead forms and they go to attack him, but they also get destroyed by the goblin centurion. Sunwoo comes and tries to help them, but his mana is low because of the undead respawn. Hanno comes and throws his daggers at the goblin centurion who isn't affected by them. Hanno asks if he made the goblin centurion angry and Sunwoo says he did. The goblin centurion then chases Hanho, who runs in fear. Using this distraction, the undead attack the goblin centurion in the back. The goblin centurion tosses them away, but then Yun comes and slashes him with her sword. The goblin centurion is hurt and Yun says she planned to defeat the goblin centurion in 1 strike but wasn't able to. Sunwoo sees this and notes that Yun is a very extraordinary woman. He raises his undead and thinks that he should also calculate his moves. Yun, Sunwoo, and the undead skeletons have cornered the goblin centurion and attack him on his back simultaneously. The goblin centurion fights back, but Sunwoo manages to destroy his ear by throwing his spear. The goblin centurion and Agers destroys the undead and Sunwoo's mana is running out. More undead rise, and seeing this, the goblin centurion laughs. Sunwoo thinks he can win against him. The goblin centurion throws the debris at them and goes to attack them. Sunwoo knows that if this continues, he will die. He just needs 1 more hit to defeat the goblin centurion. He sees a sword on a stone and wonders about a shot that will take the goblin centurion down. The goblin centurion is overwhelming the undead army and Yun. Sunwoo then picks up the 2 swords that are around him. He commands 2 of his undead skeletons to charge towards the goblin centurion. The goblin centurion manages to destroy the undead skeletons, but when he is distracted, Sunwoo throws one of his swords towards his first undead skeleton, and he tries to attack the goblin centurion from above, but the goblin centurion manages to block it. The screen tells Sunwoo that due to his team play, the synergy effect is now active. Since Sunwoo, Yun, and one of the undead skeletons have a sword, they have received the warrior synergy and have their attack speed increased by 10% and weapon weight reduced by 50%. The first undead skeleton now also has the one-armed warrior effect active. Sunwoo knows that if he synergizes with his weapon, he can win this fight. He picks up a chair to attack the goblin centurion. Yun and the undead skeleton also move to attack the goblin centurion. The goblin centurion is overwhelmed with attacks coming from all directions. He gets hit by the chair and gets cut by Yun. He is also attacked by the undead skeleton, but he then counterattacks the undead skeleton. When he makes a second attack, he gets hit by a dagger from Hanho. As the goblin centurion tries to remove the dagger from his arm, Sunwoo orders his first undead skeleton to sacrifice himself. He goes to attack the goblin centurion without any fear. Sunwoo says his goodbye to the first undead skeleton and thanks him for everything he did so far. He remembers that this undead endured for a long time and fought well. It was now time for it to sacrifice itself for the victory. He goes to slash the goblin centurion, and when the goblin centurion tries to attack, he blocks it and cuts its head off, surprising Sunwoo. The screen tells Sunwoo that because of the one-armed warrior effect, the probability of the first attack of the boss being blocked was increased by 88%. The boss monster is defeated and the group earns 225 gold as a reward. The screen informs Sunwoo that has leveled up to level 3. Energy starts coming out of the first undead skeleton who herded the goblin centurion. Hanho asks what is happening to the undead skeleton. Sunwoo says he doesn't know. The first undead skeleton gets upgraded by absorbing the goblin boss magical power. Its defensive power is drastically increased and the trait commander has been added. Sunwoo sees a seal on the undead skeleton and wonders why he got it without his approval. Just then, he sees from his list of subordinates that his first undead skeleton has been upgraded to an elite level 2. He also has a commander title. Sunwoo wonders about the synergy of the undead army with the commander's traits and thinks if this includes platoons, squadrons, and companies. To test this stuff out, he needs to increase his number of subordinates. Hanho and Yun tell Sunwoo that they have leveled up too. Yun gets a screen asking her to choose a reward. She asks Sunwoo what is good, and Sunwoo tells her that since it is Rado, she has to just hope for good luck. Hanho asks if Sunwoo can also see the cards, and Sunwoo replies he can and tells Hanho that he has to choose one out of the 5 cards. The screen tells Sunwoo to choose a level-up card. Sunwoo chooses a card and gets the skill Bone Weapon Formation. Sunwoo can make a weapon from the bones of corpses. The types of weapons he can make are swords, blunt weapons, spears, and arrows. The screen then informs Sunwoo that he has completed the Revenge of the Dead exclusive quest and receives an exclusive skill as a reward. It also says that Sunwoo's fate has changed subtly. The exclusive skill increased the maximum number of subordinates Sunwoo has by 1, meaning he can now have 5 skeletons. He wonders what fate changed subtly means. He decides to be more prudent in his selections. Just then, a cloak falls from the sky as a reward for Hanho. It is a thief hood, and Sunwoo asks what its function is. Hanho says that it increased the probability of hiding from the monster by 50%. Hanho says that this is perfect for running away, though he now doesn't run away anymore since he can fight now. Yun gets a rock as a reward. Hanho asks her what it is, and Yun replies, saying it is an ignition rock. Hanho asks if it is like a flint, and Yun explains that if she sharpens a knife with this, it will burn the enemies when it cuts them. Hanho says that it is cool, and Sunwoo tells them to test it later as they need to get out of here first. In the hallway, Minsu asks Lee if they can keep staying there as the students in the cafeteria are making a fuss, saying that they should have followed Sunwoo to hurt the boss monster. Lee approaches them and abuses them, telling them that he is trying his best to protect them and saying that Sunwoo is talking nonsense. He tells them that he can't risk his life to protect them anymore and says that those who want to go can leave. He tells them that he is protecting them, but a student tells him that he isn't. Sunwoo is trying to protect them. Lee gets a high temper, saying that Sunwoo will get hurted on the rooftop and that if they want to follow him, they can do the same. The students are silent as they see someone behind Lee. Lee asks them why they are quiet, and a voice comes from behind Lee asking him who is going to be hurted. Lee looks behind to see the undead skeletons and Sunwoo alive. Sunwoo asks him if Lee wanted him to die. Sunwoo opens the door and the magic seal is broken. Lee is unable to believe that Sunwoo managed to hurt the boss monster. Hanho tells Lee that he is a real eyesore. Sunwoo asks Lee if he has something to say to him. Lee tries to say something but gets cut off by the chatter of the students who say that Lee just acted strong and tough from the beginning and he was nothing. Sunwoo and his group exit the building and notice that everything is quiet outside. Sunwoo tells the students that they are safe now but still advises them to come out quietly. They all exit the building and see the bodies of students and people lying on the floor. Hanho asks Sunwoo what they should do. Sunwoo says that goblins usually walk in groups and wonder if they are hiding on the campus. Just then, Hanho points out people he sees. It is another group of students who survived the monsters by fighting them. Lee recognizes the leader of the group, Daesung. Daesung is the president of the student council and he and Lee are good friends. Yun sees Daesung and expresses that she doesn't like him. Lee tells Daesung about Sunwoo and his group. Daesung introduces himself as Park Daesung, the president of the student council, and tells them that they all went through the same thing as they also beat the monsters. He tells them if they stay with them, they will be safe. Daesung sees the undead skeletons and asks Sunwoo what these are. Sunwoo explains that they are from the job card he chose. Daesung doesn't like that they are the same goblins, the monsters that hurted humans. Sunwoo asks Daesung if he is trying to portray him as a dangerous man. Daesung tells Sunwoo that if he wants to join their group, he has to hurt these monsters. Sunwoo denies it, saying he can't do that, and Daesung asks him if he is going to keep the disgusting monsters between them. Hanho stands up for the undead skeletons, saying that they aren't disgusting but cute. Sunwoo tells him to keep quiet. Sunwoo again denies Daesung, saying that he can't do that as hurting them would be equal to him losing his weapons. Daesung says that Sunwoo doesn't need to worry about not having weapons as he will protect them. He tells Sunwoo that he's giving him a last chance. Yum speaks up, saying that they don't need to join their group and asks them if the student council always has to play a great role and tells them they are toxic. Daesung asks her if she is the president of the physical education department. Yum denies it, saying that it doesn't matter because the school is now destroyed. Daesung tells her to calm down and join their side. He says that she will regret it if she doesn't. She tells Daesung to stop being hypocritical and accuses him of taking several million won by fabricating the receipt during the campus festival. She says that she was the one who told the school newspaper about it. Daesung is shocked to hear this and tells them that he can't help them anymore and tells them to leave. Sunwoo, Hanho, and Yun leave as Daesung tells them that they are going to regret it, as it is better to go together because of the synergy effect. Later, as they are alone, Sunwoo asks Yun if she has a problem with the leader of the student council. Yun tells Sunwoo that the president sucks as he has been wandering around the campus to pick up girls and some of her juniors were betrayed by him, and he may have an important title, but his true nature never changes. Sunwoo hears this and Hanho agrees, saying that he is the bad guy. Sunwoo tells them that their first escape mission is to avoid the campus building. Yun tells him that if it is an escape mission, then it is better to avoid the crowds. She says that the monsters are attacking the place where people are crowded. Sunwoo agrees and says that they need to avoid the buildings and get out of there using the trail on the hill behind the campus. It leads to the main gate and only a few people are there. They are climbing the stairs and Hanho says he has a bad feeling as it is too quiet here. Sunwoo then suddenly tells them to stop. Hanho asks why, but Sunwoo tells him to keep quiet. They see a giant monster with a big axe walking on the corpses. Hanno asks what it is and says that it is bigger than the goblin boss. Sungwoo recognizes the monster as an orc. The orc sees the group and roars, coming to attack them. Sungwoo is happy as a new skeleton ingredient for him has appeared. That wraps up this part, but there's more to come. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next exciting chapter.